The sort of pipeline from the 2010s Korean MMORPGs evolved into Cookie Run Kingdom, into Genshin Impact, into Honkai Star Wars. About how Chow Garden for a long time was seen as a useless minigame, but the Tamagotchification is seen in video games like Red Dead Redemption 2. And then that turned into Baldur's Gate 3, which it's time to have this conversation. I've been posting since 2022. And last year, I really dedicated to YouTube with some failures, but also some successes. Some people, because of the successes, have called me a PokeTuber, and I take that title on with so much joy because not everybody can say that it's their job to talk about Pokemon, but I just right now don't feel like that's fully encompassing why I do this. I think Pokemon is the touchstone of this fascination with like
cons
that I've had for like 3 years at this point, almost 4. But today I want to talk about the Girlypop Awakening because I believe that we are on the razor's edge of a shift in a lot of different media. I'm going to keep this to video games because I think video games really shows this shift, but this is happening in music, this is happening in movies, this is happening in fashion. The Girlypop Awakening is here. Before we dig all the way into this, I'm gonna do the Goliath task of trying to define what Girlypop is. Instead of just like giving y'all like 20-part series that's just kind of like the vibe of what Girlypop is. It's been a long enough time that I think I can put forth like my first real concept, definition, phrase, something behind it that gives us a little bit more of an anchor. I'm gonna keep adjusting my camera because I'm not a videographer. I'm a yapper, like I don't know what to say. I believe that Girlypop is like a radical acceptance and sometimes reclamation of like feminine and queer aesthetics and like all of the intersections within it. I've seen a lot of aversion to Girlypop. Like I said, I post all over the place. I post every single day. I make content every single day. So I field a lot of reactions to what Girlypop is, as well as see a lot of the discussions about what's happening around it. I get it. I really do. Some people don't like labels. I don't like labels. Go to my Instagram and you will see 10 different versions of me in the week. Human beings are really, really multifaceted. But the reality of the situation is a lot of the information that we have these days is disseminated through algorithms. And algorithms basically force you to optimize the way that you project information according to their rules. And I'm a big believer, call it my Capricorn stellium, but you have to learn the rules to break them, and I think that Girlypop as a phrase is really carving out a space and breaking a lot of rules. Girlypop is useful because it's a term that resonates on the algorithms. It's a term that resonates with people. Like, even if you don't know what Girlypop is and you've never heard of it, and I'm the first person to say the words in your ears, there's something about it that feels familiar. You can start connecting dots even without me contextualizing it for you. In a world where we have to think about tags and search engine optimization and keywords, Girlypop is a really effective way of explaining the vibe of what we're going for without having to water down the intrinsic femininity and queerness of it. You know, when I say queerness, I really do mean LGBTQIA+, like every single letter in that. For people who are on the outside looking in, who just kind of like really appreciate the conversation and find it fascinating, I feel like you don't have to necessarily abide by the label queer because you're involved in the LGBTQIA+. Like, I feel like this sort of acronym has lost a lot of its meaning when really every single letter and symbol in it means everybody. Everybody who loves each other, everybody who appreciates the nuance and the complexities of the human experience. It's not necessarily because Girlypop defines the queer experience, but I think that queer people see and experience the world sometimes in a different way due to circumstance, due to certain experiences they were forced to have. It allows you to understand that not everything is so binary, not everything is so black and white. Sometimes original thought and original ways of presenting aesthetics and ideas can be really valuable and really fascinating. I just think in the big year of 2025, cozy is not enough for me. Because a lot of the time when we want to be like gamers and stuff, we just get cozy games. And no, I know a lot of girly pops in this comment section right now on my stream that I'm about to do in like an hour. On my TikTok, we play more than just Stardew Valley. We play more than just pink Pokemon. We play a lot of different games, and there's a certain thing about these games that we're attracted to, and I feel like the culture is finally tapping into it, which is what I'm gonna get to in a second. Pokemon is the touchstone for this conversation because Pokemon tends to be a universal and like critical mass Girlypop awakening for a lot of people. They have existed for a really long time. They've stood the test of time. It's easily accessible, easily understandable, and a lot of people have made memories with Pokemon. So when you start the conversation about what Pokemon is Girlypop, is your favorite Pokemon Girlypop, as you've seen on my channel, people come in with memories, with context, with their own sort of opinions on what that means. So when I say, you know, what's your favorite Pokemon? Do you think it's Girlypop? You might not know what Girlypop is off the top of your head, but you know what your favorite Pokemon is. You know what some other people's favorite Pokemon is. And because of that, you can kind of connect the dots and be like, well, I think Gardevoir is Girlypop, and you would be right. Pokemon gives people options. It's a role-play game, an RPG, that gives you options on what Pokemon to use. What 6 Pokemon do you want to use against this gym, against this antagonist, this group of villains, anything like that, that expresses not only your technique as a battler, but your tastes and aesthetics? What story do you want to tell? Do you want to even tell a story? There's so many Pokemon, more than 1,000 at this point, that help the player to express what type of Pokemon trainer they are. It creates many different types of players, many people who've already subconsciously sort of engaged in the conversation within themselves of like, what taste do I have? What aesthetics do I have? And is there a word for that? I get asked a lot on my platforms, DMs, chats, comments, have you played this game? Do you know about this game? This game is so Girlypop. Baby, I know about, I want to say like 90% of them, but I keep the conversation on Pokemon because Pokemon doesn't have fragmentation. You know, there's a lot of Girlypop awakenings that have happened. I actually have these written down too. There's a whole conversation to be had about the sort of pipeline from the 2010s Korean MMORPGs, how that intersects with the Western MMORPGs that came out in the 2010s, how that spoke to weebs as well as Harry Potter fans, those who resonated with Hermione, those who resonated with Lucky Star, and how that over time has evolved into Cookie Run Kingdom, into Genshin Impact, into Honkai Star Rail, which each have their own kawaii, cutesy aesthetics, but also have a lot of references to queer culture if you read in between the lines.
If the West Wind ever ends, let that be the place where we reunite.
There's a whole conversation to be had about the Sims modding community, how it sort of created the validation of the dress-up game mechanic that we now see in games like Dress to Impress, which we're going to talk about later, and games like Infinity Nikki, a whole multi-million-dollar franchise that makes money off of just dress-up mechanics. The art of dress-up, the art of makeup, the art of hair, the art of being a diva has so many different expressions, and there are terabytes of information that you can use to tell what kind of diva are you, what kind of diva do you like to see, how do you see the world as beautiful. There's a whole conversation to be had about how Chow Garden for a long time was seen as a useless minigame, so much so that Sonic abandoned it as a minigame, but the Tamagotchi-ification of video games, something, oh, let me get my cute little digital pet, is seen in video games like Red Dead Redemption 2, which has an entire fandom of people who make jokes about the fact that Arthur Morgan is their own Tamagotchi. There's an entire conversation to be had about how JRPGs are not necessarily considered like very popular in the West, especially after the Xbox came out. But for some reason, every single time I talk to people who like JRPGs, more often than not, they had a gay awakening from a Final Fantasy character. there. Or, like Fire Emblem. To go even further, there's a whole conversation to be had about how like LGBTQIA plus, queer people, femmes contributed so much to like choice-based, almost queer sci-fi and fantasy dramas in the likes of Mass Effect, in the likes of Dragon Age, in the likes of Skyrim, if you
know what months to get, honey.
And then that turned into Baldur's Gate 3, which feels like its own Girlypop Awakening because a lot of people were really surprised that Baldur's Gate 3 was what it was, but that was like years, decades in the making. So yes, I agree. There is a lot to talk about. But Pokemon is the easiest way to talk about it, the easiest way to introduce it. And I don't know when it started. I don't know who started it. I don't know where we can trace it to. I think it's just been something that's been bubbling, but I think in the past few years, Girlypop has really solidified itself into the zeitgeist. And I believe that the sort of breadth of the conversation that could be had is also seen in the Pokédex itself. I mean, go to the comment section of my Girlypop tier list of all of the different typings, and you'll see people going on entire dissertations talking about why these certain aesthetics are Girlypop. And I actually fully agree with it because I'm a big believer that Girlypop is just an umbrella term for different types of pops, different types of popologies. You might think that I'm crazy to say that there's different popologies, but there are. I actually have an entire Discord that I helped to start called the Girlypop University that goes in depth discussing different popologies. Manly pop, spooky pop, fierce pop, freaky pop. Like, the entire Pokédex represents that. You know, like when we're talking about, weird pop, there's the entire sort of spectrum that can be represented by like Porygon Z to like shiny Grimmsnarl. When we talk about spooky pop, that's obviously like ghost type Pokemon, but we can also talk about how spooky pop, it can also be different types of horror media, both horrific and scary, fear-based, and comedy-based. When we talk about manly pop, it's a reverence for masculine aesthetics and the performance of masculine energy and masculine sort of tropes. I mean, think about drag kings, that's manly pop. So I hope you can understand why I use Pokemon as the touchstone. I just believe Pokemon, over the amount of time it's been here in the zeitgeist, been in the culture, say what you want about it, but the intellectual property has forced itself to continue to grow. And in doing that, it's forced itself to dig its heels into so many different aesthetics. And because of that, so many millions of people can have their own way of projecting onto the game. And then the sort of possibilities of the type of people that find themselves in Pokemon, the amount of possibilities is endless. Thus, psychopaths like me show up on the internet talking about Girlypop. The Girlypop Awakening is here, and there's been palpable shifts that we can finally sort of point at that show its presence, really. And it's all fun and games, but what I find really interesting is we have this word suddenly in the past few years that finally gives us like an anchor point to like just sort of encompass all of our thoughts. And isn't it crazy that we have people all over the world that can use the term girly pop, and for the most part, people get what you're saying? I mean, think about it. I'm at a point in my life now where I can comfortably make a video knowing that like it might not be the most successful thing, but I can comfortably make a video about this topic here, the Girlypop Awakening, and I'm not afraid of the algorithm not knowing what I'm talking about. I'm not afraid of people not knowing what I'm talking about. It's already been defined. The floor, when we talk about Girlypop, the floor continues to rise. At one point, the floor didn't exist, but now it exists, and it feels like it's rising. And I feel like, like I was saying, there's a lot of different mediums that you can see Girlypop really taking foot in. Like in music, we have so many different things that are just so niche, so unafraid to experiment and play.
I love that. I love your ability and willingness to experiment and play.
The name of the game in music right now is to niche it down. Movies these days, especially like for me, I'm a big horror fan. Horror doesn't resonate anymore the way that it used to. We like to look back on like the 2000s horror phase, and we enjoy it because it's like kind of campy, it's a little bit simple, it's endearing, it's charming in how young it feels. But these days, real horror like masterpieces are things that do something out of the box, things that play with the meta of like horror tropes. Before I get too off topic, what I mean is like, we no longer have music that is made for the club. We have music that's made for the gay club. You know, it's a lot more common these days to meet somebody who likes different types of pop music, not just pop music. When it comes to horror movies, we don't have horror as a media that is made just for theaters. We have horror that's made for specific demographics of people to be played in their home on their TV, exploring horrors and fears for that specific person. So bringing this back to the conversation around video games and girly pop video games, I've mentioned a few before. I've mentioned stuff that's happened before. I've mentioned, you know, different sort of canon girly pop experiences that I know people know exist. But the one thing that I think really shows that girly pop is in, and that the culture is waking up to its validity as a video game genre and an aesthetic, is dress to impress. Dress up games have been around since I feel like video games have been around. The moment like consoles and machines were able to do more than just show like 2 pixels on a screen walking left to right, we've had character customization in some way, shape, or form. You know, some people in my audience, many people in my audience, like kind of my core demographic really, can remember Flash games. You know, like those Flash dress-up games. The thing about dress-up games though is I feel like often this mechanic is like overlooked and underused. It's never really rounded out. They don't really go deeper into it, and anytime it does happen, it's like on accident. To bring up another game, Princess Peach Showtime, which is another example of like girly pop entering the zeitgeist, kind of fizzled with the dress up mechanic. And that happens not just in Princess Peach Showtime, it happens in a lot of games that have dress up. They either don't have enough options, they haven't really tested it with the right audience to add dress up for people who actually will use it. Like often it's like ugly stuff. It's like, girl, who created this dress up game? Like it doesn't go far enough, at least for me. And in Princess Peach Showtime, like it was fun to see the outfit, but I don't know, it didn't really go there for me in many regards. A game that really did touch on dress up, that kind of, I think we all know, Final Fantasy X too. The idea of using dress spheres, like this almost like Sailor Moon-esque Magical Girl-esque transformation thing, and like being able to like use different outfits and like have like fully fledged ideas about how to mix and match them, how to create techniques and strategies around the stats and skills that you get with each outfit. But not only that, which ones look the best? Which one expresses me as a person, as a player into this digital world? Dress to Impress takes it there. Dress to Impress is obviously made by somebody who understands the value and what a dress-up game could be, and it feels like really the first step forward into fully like validating this genre. And it had like the perfect storm of things to make it as relevant as it is. Like Roblox is a really accessible game. Just like I was saying with Pokemon, it has to be accessible. You have to be able to let people play it without so much startup cost or so many like sort of hardware limitations and things like that. It's just, you get more people, and when you get more people playing the game, more people trying out, you have a higher chance of finding your audience. Frankly, it wasn't until recently that feminine people were even considered part of the video game demographic. So like while Final Fantasy X-2 is like really famous for the girly pops who got to play it, it often feels like it's relegated to obscurity because it came out during an era where frankly a lot of people weren't buying consoles for the people who might actually like that game. That's not the case with Roblox. You can get Roblox on your like Android One phone. Another thing that makes it so valid is just like with Final Fantasy X-2, it takes it far enough to make it like a real gameplay mechanic. Yeah, you get the satisfaction of making a character and customizing it, but what really takes it there is experiencing something further than that. Like, you know, for The Sims, when you mod The Sims, yeah, it feels really good making the character, but doesn't it feel even better to experience watching that character, however you made them, go through a story? There's a conclusion to it further than just making the character. There's a PvP element, rather, in Dress to Impress, which I find so unique, and that might be another contributor as to why it's such a unique game, because never have we seen a dress-up game that is a PvP game. All of us here can admit, like, obviously, duh, that's possible. Dress up is a valid mechanic. But finally, somebody has put their foot forward into being the first one to really try to make an accessible PvP dress up game. And now look at us. Like, I tend to stay into like niche content, the type of stuff that I digest. Like, I don't really watch a lot of popular things. When like really viral things show up on my feeds, I don't like it. Like, what's going viral right now? Like Streamer University, I don't know what that is. But the thing is like these super popular, often straight guys who do like video game content, you caught them playing Dress to Impress. And I know that some people might not like to hear it, but often things like dress up games and like girly things are met with antagonism in the video game space. I mean, I don't really have to defend this. Just log on to Marvel Rivals with your one friend who just sounds feminine, and then tell me what you think about how gamers treat feminine presences in the space, right? So it's really crazy to see Dress to Impress become something so big, so universal, so loved. There's other games that have come out too. Like I've said, Infinity Nikki is one of them. I know that she's going through a lot of controversy right now. I don't really know what's going on with it. Like I said, I just watch what I like to watch. I don't really get into like drama. I don't really get into like panning video games because I just play games that I like. Like if I don't like the game, I'm getting a refund, and that's just really it. So I don't know what's going on with her, but I do know that Nikki is one of my cousins, and I hope that she makes it out of this. Regardless of what's happening with that game right now, the concepts of it existing represent that girly pop is here, that we've awakened to its value as a genre, that businesses really think that they can make money off of it, because they can. I really was focusing a lot as I was sort of thinking of this video about us as like a collective waking up to girly pop, as like society waking up to girly pop, consumers and gamers waking up to girly pop as a genre. But really this initially started with me sort of brainstorming ideas about like awakenings, because you know the term like my awakening is used in many different ways, but it's a more personal thing, you know, and I do believe that the girly pop awakening, while it does feel like it's happening with a critical mass of people right now, I feel like people who watch me had theirs a long time ago. For me, I think maybe my first one was Sonic. Tails the Fox, something about Tails the Fox was my girly pop awakening. I'd always loved video games. I loved playing fighting games with like my family. I loved playing Mario. I loved playing Pokemon too. But when I discovered Sonic, and I discovered specifically Tails, there was something about that character and being able to play that character that resonated with me so much. I've put so many hours of playing Tails the Fox and Sonic Adventure 2 Director's Cut in Chow Garden that it's undeniable that that character had an effect on me. You know, Soul Calibur, what was the Soul Calibur that had a character customization? The first one that did that, I was there for it. And I was just really obsessed with creating my own characters and seeing them fight each other and like going through the story with them and all that kind of stuff. Talim, Xianghua, like those are characters that I feel like were big girly pop awakenings for me. Final Fantasy X was a huge one. Specifically the character Yuna was a girly pop awakening for me. I loved her being a leading lady. I loved how vulnerable and emotional she was. Not necessarily like crying all the time, but she was just dripping with so many, so much theatrics and drama, and it was so cunty and like gorgeous to watch. And then when she evolved into the character that she became in Final Fantasy X too, I just became completely obsessed.
You know, you've changed.
Well, you've missed a few things.
I want to hear everything.
Well, it all began when I saw this sphere of you.
The Sims was a huge Girlypop Awakening for me. The Sims is the reason why I'm very critical of character customization. The Sims is the reason, like modding The Sims specifically, is the reason why when a game says that they have character customization and I use it, you better have character customization, because I don't need to spend 70 bucks to play your halfway done character customization when I have The Sims 2, 3, and 4, and I can mod them all however I want and have exactly the character that I want. And really, if I wanted to go super crazy, there's even mods that fundamentally change the gameplay mechanics to create and simulate different scenarios that I want to. So like, if I want a fantasy setting, I can make a fantasy setting. If I want a sci-fi setting, I can make a sci-fi setting. If I want a real reality TV show drama, I can do that too. Like, don't tell me that you do character customization when you're trying to sell to people who have played The Sims. Like, that was a big Girlypop Awakening for me, and that set the bar very, very high when it comes to dress up as a mechanic. Another one that's a huge one for me is like MapleStory. I talk about this all the time. The characters that I like to use in like my branding for content is MapleStory characters, because not only do I find it really cute, I find the aesthetic really cute, I find the art style timeless, but it also perfectly describes how I see myself as somebody who likes makeup and hair and fashion. I don't necessarily have the means to express it the way that I want, and I'm not a tailor or a seamstress or anything like that, so I can't really make the things that I want. But the assets that are available in MapleStory, the amount of things they've added to their cash shop and the character customization, while you don't really get to like modify makeup and stuff because it's like a chibi pixel art style, the clothing and the fashion references that they have are right up my alley. And like, that was also a big Girlypop Awakening for me when it comes to character customization, but not only that, RPGs. MMORPGs. Like, it's really, really hard for me to get into an MMORPG if the fashion game is not the same as MapleStory. And I know MapleStory's been out for like 20 plus years at this point, but it's still kind of one of the ones doing it best in the MMORPG space. I have a lot of Girlypop Awakenings, and I think we continue to have Girlypop Awakenings. I would like to know, if you made it this far into the video, what your Girlypop Awakening is, because, you know, at the end I want it to be a little bit more personal, so I'm gonna say it. I obviously am going to continue making Pokemon content when new Pokemon stuff comes out, but like I said, I've been doing this for like 3 years, and I've exhausted every single Girlypop take that I've had with Pokemon, and I want to continue the conversation, but I need content to continue the conversation with. And I know that there's other perspectives and there's other things, but I feel like the best way to really start opening up different avenues is to maybe talk with y'all about what your Girlypop Awakening is. Like, I'm hoping that this video inspires people to leave those dissertations that I see in the Girlypop tier list. I mean, people leave long comments on all my videos, so I think that's also a reason why I feel a little bit more comfortable making a video like this, going on kind of like a psycho rant about what Girlypop is and the Girlypop Awakening and things like that. I haven't forgot about that Univa video, the Univa League like tier list kind of thing. The thing is Univa is a huge Girlypop conversation. If we're talking about Girlypopology in the Pokemon franchise, Univa is so important. I feel like the conversation goes beyond just the league. The conversation has to talk about all the aesthetics. And you guys know, like, when in those videos, I talk about the context, I talk about the aesthetics, I talk about the history, I talk about the technology, I talk about everything that creates what it is. And Pokemon Generation 5, the Univa region, is a turning point in Pokemon. It's a swan song in Pokemon. It is Pokemon letting everybody know just exactly who they are. It's an artistic installment, really, and we'll get to that when I have the energy. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I've realized over years of doing this, I've tried to do essays, I've tried to do different formats and stuff like that. I really do think that I excel as being a yapper. It took me honestly years to be able to just sit in front of a camera and express my ideas. It used to take me hours to just make one TikTok, but these days I'm pretty good at just talking about my ideas, and I often find that when I do it this way, it resonates way more. So I hope that you all liked this video. I liked making it. And I hope to see you next time. Don't worry, we're going to talk about Pokemon again. Nintendo Switch 2 is coming out, so there's stuff to talk about with that. I have other tier lists that I'm going to think of doing, but you know, there's not always a tier list to make. But there are things to talk about. There are things that I want to talk about. So, anyway, I got to get started on my stream because this was taking longer than I thought, and I'm almost late. Let me turn on my computer. Bye!